NEFT transfers and things are moving on the e-payment, as it were, platform. So it looks like, yes, things are moving. Do you think we've reached a point in which the lines are getting a little bit blurred about who is my customer, who is your customer as far as consumer banking is concerned? Folks just want to do banking business. It doesn't matter which bank do you have an account, or there's no longer the days when bankers say, hey, do you have an account with us? I don't need to have an account with you. I just want to transact business. So talk to us about digital disruptions. Do you think the markets still need more architecture, more infrastructure, the banks that is, to galvanize 160 million people? If you look at the number of accounts we have, 160 million people, we're still scratching the surface, aren't we?
And that's a very interesting point that you've just raised. Now, in terms of digital disruption, maybe I should start with the projections that we have made in terms of the next 10 years. We believe that banking revenues, about 30% of banking revenues are at risk in the next 10 to 15 years. And this is largely because of the rise of fintechs. Fintechs are financial technology players that a lot of them offer online services or digital services to their customers. Right now, the thing is, people talk about digital disruptions as if it's something that is more restricted to the Western world. But in reality, the digital disruptions are basically happening here in Nigeria. So in the payment space, in the lending space, even in the deposit savings, personal finance management space, there are a lot of smaller companies that are a lot more nimble and have significantly lower overheads and limited and don't have the regulatory restrictions that the established banks have, that are able to offer seamless experience to their customers. So digital disruptions truly here. Now, the other thing we also need to mention, a point which you mentioned, is convergence, right? Now, retail banking in Nigeria is still relatively new in the sense of the way retail banking should truly be done, right? So we're shifting from a product-centric retail banking to where we're selling experiences, we're selling services that are bundled, and that convergence that you talked about is what banks now need to take full advantage of. Banks need to shift away from pushing products to customers to selling experiences to customers that are similar to what, for example, an Uber provides. The reason you would use an Uber, or the average person would use Uber, is because of the simplicity and the convenience. Now, banks need to start to think that way. And, it's also important that services are not offered as just products, but as, a unique experience. And that's what encourages stickiness of the Nigerian customer.
Okay, let's wrap up the conversation for the next 2-3 minutes. Look at what strategies and relevance do you think banks should put there for the future, not just from the technology side, but in terms of skills and new thinking, customer service, like the telcos will do? They're not selling you anything, they're not selling you airtime, they're just selling experience, as you said. What is the future here for the banks? What strategies do they need to gap this market and try to avoid what you said, that massive decline in their earnings, if they don't shift their mindset from corporate banking to consumer banking services?
Well, the first thing, and for me, strategies are across 4 or 5 areas. So the first thing is trust needs to be rebuilt, right? So we need to, banks need to be a lot more open about product features, rates, fees, and so on and so forth. So trust is, even though trust is high, in terms of transparency, fees, and so on and so forth, that needs, the banks need to rebuild trust. Secondly, banks need to embrace analytics, right? Banks need to sort out the data challenges that they have so that they can better understand their customers. Today, we have a demographic of customers that are more digitally savvy than financially savvy. So it just means that the type of products that banks, or the type of services, or type of experiences that banks need to be pushing, obviously need to take digital into consideration, right? The third thing is the distribution channels. So banks need to almost re-engineer their distribution channels in line with their customer demographics. So it's almost like, the average customer today likes to use more digital channels than traditional channels. So, for example, the figures we have from the polls show that about 70% of customers use ATMs in Nigeria, about 55% use mobile banking, about 50% use online banking, while barely 33% use the traditional bank for basic services. So obviously there needs to be a revamp of the digital channels, ensuring that the digital channels are not siloed channels but are omni-channels. And then finally, the final thing is improving customer experience.
Okay, I'm sure. My apologies for disrupting you there. I'm sorry, I do apologize. We appreciate your time. Adedapo Adewale, Director, Advisory Services at Ernst & Young. This is a conversation that's as big as the banking system itself. Thank you very much for bringing those insights and perspectives into it. We appreciate that from Ernst & Young. Let's come back after the break, the final lap of the program. So we're expanding that conversation with Adedapo Adewale of Ernst & Young regarding the global banking business here in West Africa. How to integrate the payment system is something the regulators are always looking for, including those who bring digital disruptions, the architecture of the marketplace. Let's see how some of the issues in Nigeria is being addressed by the central bank, the structural issues and policies that we need to fast-track e-payment services in the financial services system. Dipo Fatokun is a director in charge of banking and payment services at the Central Bank of Nigeria. Listen to what he has to say at the Swift Business Forum in Lagos on Tuesday.
There is a need for structural reform for us to trade successfully within the West African Monetary Zone, so that each country will specialize, so to say, on areas of comparative advantage. One of the things that has actually hindered the trade between African countries is because most African countries are commodity traders or commodity producers, so to say. So there is the need for countries to restructure their economy, to reform their economy, so that they can also be involved in activities outside the commodities market. In essence, to diversify their products. For example, cocoa is a very popular product in Africa. And most countries in Africa also produce cocoa. So if everyone is producing cocoa, then who will need it? That means that producers of commodities will have to diversify. Another thing that should be done is to create incentives among the countries. For example, tax holidays, market instruments, waivers, and things like that. And there is no doubting the fact that the central banks of these countries and the Ministry of Finance, the fiscal authorities, will play a very big role in doing this. One other thing that we need to do is on the issue of infrastructure. Someone once told me that there are some African countries that if you want to travel to, you first have to go to Europe before you can go to such African country. That is because there is no connectivity by air. So there is a need to look at the provision of roads, the provision of technology, the provision of transportation, such that these countries can be linked, well linked. Because if two countries are not well linked, then trading among the countries will not be easy. Then policies will have to be put in place.
Okay, that's Adedapo Fatokun, Director in charge of banking and payment services at the Central Bank of Nigeria. The Budget and Planning Ministry today starts a 2-day retreat on economic and budgeting process here at the political capital. So I'm sticking around here for the next 48 hours to be part of that. We'll bring you what's going on in there, the Udoma's ministry for you here on Channels Television. We thank you very much for watching, everyone. You get a brand new edition of the program tomorrow live from Abuja's political capital, bringing business to the countries. But look at this is where the biggest business really do happen. Do have a great day. Let's get together tomorrow at the same time, 10 o'clock in the morning. I'll see you then.